Hello again, AI legends. So today I'm just going to be quickly sharing about an experience that I have recently where I was trying to help a friend automate some of his business processes and using a generative AI product, LLMs, kind of bombed. So I'm going to quickly share the lessons that I've learned and we're going to jump straight into it.
Hello, and we're back. I just want to have a high level overview of what I did and what the kind of product is. And basically, I was just helping out my friend to do a Slack automation where I use a LLM to summarize some of his data. And this is a very early alpha test, so I just thought that I have something being tested properly before actually market it and sell it for actual money. And it's just nice to have a friend sort of test this out for you and see what goes wrong. So as I said, it really bombed, and I had the whole UI set up for him and it was sort of working well on my personal test. But when he tested it, it didn't quite work. I was surprised. So the main thing that he was telling me is that it runs halfway and it seems like the UI works, but it's not getting the final results out. Okay, I'll just go and look into it. Basic product looks like I have a Slack bot running on a cloud instance in Google right here. And this simulate this as kind of lines of codes, and at some point it does make a call or an API call to Gemini and gets the output back. So I've put it as an async kind of function. So initially I built it out as a synchronous application where it means that it kind of runs things sequentially and requests are processed one after the other. But I thought if I'm going to have this go out to multiple users at one time, can kind of work through different users' requests at once. So I'm going to jump into what actually happened. And after looking through the logs, this is what actually happens. So obviously the application is way more complicated than what I made. It's not just one call. And here I've built in some web scraping stuff for him as well. Apparently he's got lots of links, way more links to scrape than I expected. So he's running that like hundreds of functions at once. And of course you have the Gemini function running in. So because of all these requests being sent out, I couldn't get the Cloud Run instance to fully complete through all the lines of code. And I found out that there's a 15 minutes timeout limit where from line number 1 to the end, if the code does not run finish, the Cloud Run instance will sort of kill itself. That's what's happening here. And initially it kind of boggled me because I wasn't quite sure what's happening, and there were lots of logs to go through. It was all quite a mess really. So this was another thing that I did find out, where if you have two users running kind of the same function, this sort of issue can happen, something called context mixing, where if you have, say, multiple users coming onto the Slack bot from different Slack channels, for example, that information might get mixed up. So if I have a function here and I don't code it properly, the results from, say, user B in purple might get mixed up with the initial user. So this is quite dangerous and made me think about how I need to design my app better. In the next bit, I'm going to share my top 3 lessons that I've learned and solutions that I'm going to implement for the next step. I'm going to break down the task a bit better. So instead of lumping everything into one massive and singular Cloud Run instance or Docker instance, I'm going to break this up into a bit more smaller chunks. And I'm going to go here with something called a more modular and small and quick kind of code, so that's a bit more maintainable for me. One thing I'm going to change to is to make sure that the outputs or how the code runs is idempotent. So that means that if the API call goes out a few times because of latency and things get messed up, the results are still the same and doesn't get overlapped. So I need to make it a lot more robust, it seems. Not just sending an API call back to from one instance back to itself, but I'm going to break it out into smaller kind of functions. So nice thing in Google Cloud Platform is that they have this thing called Cloud Functions, where it's really handy to run a small bit of code and then it will shut down by itself. So I'm going to couple this with a thing called Cloud Tasks, where it's kind of like a queuing system and a system that tracks whether the function actually runs. If it doesn't run, it fails, then Cloud Tasks will rerun the function again until a success code is sent back to Cloud Tasks. And all that can be stored into a database, and then the initial Slack container can fetch the results later on. Yeah, so this is probably a bit better. You don't have the kind of issues earlier where I have issues with timeouts, issues with the data being mixed up. So it's a bit more robust, more complicated in architecture, but if it's needed to be done, I'm gonna do it. The second lesson that I learned is to have contingency planning. One of the good advice that I've got in this space is to have a utilization or maximum use of about 80% and have that additional 20% extra bandwidth or excess bandwidth just in case something goes wrong, and that will kind of fill up space. So it's kind of really planning for the unexpected, really. I have that 15 minutes timeout limit that I have my Cloud Run instance, and to overcome that, I can kind of break this down and break the task down to much smaller kind of chunks. And even here, there's a method called a fan out and fan in method. So I can kind of break down, say, if it has 100 calls or 100 URLs to scrape, that can be broken down into like 4 or 10 different subtasks that run by itself, and then all that gets stored into the database individually. That will give me a lot more time for the timeouts, so I don't need to worry about my Cloud Run instance dying halfway again. Yeah, and the third and last, but probably most important thing that I learned is really to build the scary stuff first. What this means is there can be a main feature that's really hard to build, like for example this. It's getting more complicated, and it's scary. It's scary. What I mean by that is it's probably easier to go out and build out a little nicer UX or optimize little button, but these are the important stuff that the users want to use, and it has to be working. So say I build the scary stuff first, and what's scary also is kind of getting that initial feedback and results back from the user. So looking at that user engagement and seeing what things could go wrong. I guess here the main thing is just really to be quite transparent about what's going wrong and own up the errors, really. Improving them and coming back to your user. Maybe this is my experience as kind of a vibe coder, using cursor to build random stuff and it just breaks. Thing is that I'm coming from a data sort of background, and think a lot more about how data can be processed and thinking about modeling and stuff. So this is quite a different beast to the whole world of engineering, making sure things are reliable and working, and thinking more about systems, kind of thinking architecture. This is a great space for me to explore. I'm super excited to see what I can do. And on a final note, actually a bit sad but also happy, really. So it's feeling like my little MVP is going out there. It's not that little anymore. It's growing up. It's becoming a bit of a dinosaur. So it's a bit mixed feelings. It's not really a fun weekend bash it out project anymore, but really it's gonna be something serious and something that people use. So the fact that it initially bombed is not super. It kind of sucks, to be honest, but the nice thing is there is something out there that's growing, and I actually have a product that's actually being used and tested. It makes me really proud. So I hope to have an update to this at some point, and I'll see you AI Legends in the next one.